Heat up your 4th of July at the Home Depot with our wide variety of grills under $300 and make every gathering one to remember. Give your outdoor space a glow up, whatever your budget is, with savings on seasonal plants starting at $5. With the grill fired up and your backyard set to perfection, you'll be able to invite friends and family over to kick off the party. Start celebrating with low prices guaranteed at the Home Depot. Prices may vary by store. Exclusions apply. See homedepot.com/price match for details.
This summer, Prime Video takes you back before Legally Blonde, before law school, and into the world of Elle Woods in high school. Set in 1995, this Gemini vegetarian knows exactly who she is until her family moves from Bel Air to Seattle. Packed with iconic fashion, 90s nostalgia, and a throwback soundtrack, Elle proves one thing. Law school was hard. High school was harder. From the world of Legally Blonde, watch Elle, a new original series only on Prime Video. Watch now.
Welcome back to the Epic Universal podcast. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and this is the podcast where we cover the latest Universal news, rumors, and history. And as always, I'm joined by Eric Hersey. And okay, so this is our show that goes live July 3rd, so almost July 4th.
Almost.
So I know where the Herseys live, there are some interesting Christmas traditions. I want to say, one of them involves fire trucks going by and popcorn balls being lobbed at children, which, again, that sounds fun to me. Anything for 4th of July? Or?
No, I think it's just a classic 4th of July. The normal fireworks going off, swimming, barbecuing, all that. So we'll be doing that. But I will be okay if Santa wants to come by in a fire truck and hurl like some popcorn balls at us. So maybe that should be the new tradition.
Here, I want to do that as well. But anyway, it's been a big news week, folks.
Yeah.
So we want to get to that. But before we do that, we also want to acknowledge that some of the listeners to this podcast have been really kind and done what Eric has asked of them and gone over to Apple and posted some reviews. So you want to share some of those?
Yeah, let's share a couple here. Paul Macho says, fun show for Universal fans. He was pulled into the Universal when Harry Potter arrived in Florida, and it's been very fun. They live in Northern California and have season passes to Hollywood, but took many great trips there, but really love all the Hollywood coverage that we've handled over the last year. And we also have Moy Guay Porgant. Sorry, guys, your names are hard to pronounce here on the Apple, but informative and entertaining. As a giant Disney fan, I've always viewed Universal Parks to be secondary to Disney. But this podcast is so informative and really shows that they are borderline equals. In many ways, Universal does things better than the mouse. So great reviews there, but thank you so much to everybody that's leaving a review. If you want to head over to jimhillmedia.com/epic and leave us one, we will certainly read it on air, and we look forward to kind of seeing your guys' opinions. And more importantly, if you guys have topics, throw them in the comments, and we will gladly put those in the queue. But I know you have a great topic for today as well for a feature.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is a labored transition. I'm just going to do it. Yeah, it's just that we're almost to the 4th of July, which is when we celebrate. We have fireworks, and what we're going to do with the feature is show how fire works at a theme park, which is a way to say we're talking about Backdraft, the attraction. So there you go.
Better than Santa Claus on a fire truck, right?
There we go. Worst intro in the history of podcasts. But anyway, before we get to that, we have news. And before we get to the news, we have to acknowledge our sponsor, which is, of course, unlockmagic.com. And if you're planning a trip to Universal Orlando or the Walt Disney World Resort, please check out Unlock Magic. Listeners to the Epic Universal podcast are saving up to 12% on theme park tickets. Plus, you can save on after-hours events like Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party. So be sure and visit unlockmagic.com and save today. So let's talk about the big news.
This is huge news, right?
Which is, interestingly enough, coming out of Philadelphia, where Eric and Lauren and I will be headed shortly to go check out the Universal exhibit at the Franklin Institute. I think we're finally going to do it this month, right?
I think we actually have a date, I I think it's coming in a couple of weeks. We got it planned out. Yes, it's happening.
It's happening. So, but again, Philadelphia is where Comcast is, it has its corporate headquarters.
Right.
And evidently, they have made some decisions about their future. Care to share it with the class, Eric? What's going on here?
Yeah, funny enough, Jim, I worked for Comcast for a bit of time, and they actually sent me to Philadelphia for training, so I know all about this situation. But yes, Comcast plans to actually split. Basically, what they're looking to do is to make the NBCUniversal and Sky positioned as a standalone media company and kind of keep the Comcast digital and the whole cable division on its own, so the broadband business. So this happened with Comcast co-CEO Mike Cavanaugh basically told employees that the businesses fit well together, NBC, Universal, and Sky, that they fit well together and plan to split the two independent publicly traded companies. So I don't know how all this works, Jim, but there's a lot of smart people out there saying all types of things. And then at the end of the day, I just ask, what does this mean for the theme parks? So, Jim, do you have any idea where this falls in the theme park realm?
Well, yeah, look, the new NBC Universal that again split off from the Comcast mothership. Well, look, that's film, that's television, that's sports, that's news, and theme parks. So that means, films like Illuminations or DreamWorks or that sort of thing still going into the parks. Likewise, hit television shows, on Peacock still going into the parks. But this is just this decision is reflecting the reality of the current, the media landscape, the notion of, people like Hunter and Lanny and Miles, look at how your children consume media these days, all right? They're on their phone. Likewise, my daughter Alice. It's just, you're looking at these companies that are tied to these legacy forms, these giant, multi-leveraged corporations, and the notion of, 10 or 15 years down the line, do we really want to be in that business? But as Eric and I were talking about as we were pre-gaming today's show, the irony is you look at a Comcast doing this, making the decision, okay, we're going to be Comcast and we're going to be NBC Universal. To be doing this in the middle of Warner Brothers and Paramount attempting to become this gigantic corporation, just this mega media corporation. That's very interesting, don't you think?
Yeah. It's kind of curious to me because, when you look at like traditional cable and you look at even not necessarily movies, but streaming has been very big, but also kind of costly. And it's not 100% sure how people are making all their money back from streaming. And then you also have the actual wired portion and like cable, people cutting the cable and so forth. It seems like there are strong elements on the Comcast portion because like we still need internet. That's guaranteed money that they're going to have. Then they also have over here, people are still going to see the movies, and theme parks seem to be really strong. It seems interesting to break them off. There's going to be strong elements, and there's also going to be some weak elements on both sides. I don't know. I just thought when they gobbled them all up and merged everything together years and years ago, it just seems kind of counterproductive to then reverse it unless they have some bigger plan, I guess.
Well, it's a fascinating time in this space, and I'm not going to lie. Anybody who's been paying attention to Disney and watching, for example, the battles that ABC has been having with the current head of the FCC. There has actually been some talk about Disney potentially doing the same thing with ABC and ESPN, with the notion of legacy media to do we really still want to be in this business?
Yeah, and it's a tricky business to be in because, with the cord cutters and cable is losing subscribers, and that caused transmission fees and stuff. There were the people have to pay less. That you're getting all these battles, and a lot of these companies are, we'll just stream. We're just going to create our own streaming. We don't have to worry about it. It's slightly interesting, but I think from a theme park perspective, you've mentioned many, many times that Comcast loves the theme park business, loves the theme park, and they were willing to give money to the theme park business. Do you think that's going to impact it? Like, does NBC Universal, are they going to have the same kind of money? Are we going to see these two companies split and be a little bit weaker? Maybe they're more agile on what they want to do. Maybe NBC Universal doesn't have to worry about answering a lot of these broadband questions, and they can really focus on what they're good at, which is entertainment and putting out all that. But is the money going to be there? Is it stabilized? I would be very curious.
Excellent question, because again, it was Brian Roberts himself, Big Cheese, who was, handed them the money fire hose. And now, with them being part of a brand new business that's been split off on its own, the financials change. And more to the point, you don't have the same guy in the corner office who's been, so solidly in your corner, so enthusiastic about this business.
Well, you've seen how that affected Disney in many years. When the films and Disney Plus was down, the parks took hits, right?
They did.
So I don't know. I guess we can see it other ways where, like, all right, with cable, people cutting the cord, and maybe the parks were taking hits and we didn't know about it. And maybe this makes it more lean where we don't have to make up for other divisions. I did kind of look it up and find out. And it turns out a lot of times when companies like split like that, they're very creative, as they have good accountants or creative accountants. And a lot of times there is situations where they'll take on certain amounts of debt and they'll spin off. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see how this all works and how that impacts all the, what I would call progress that they've made over the years with the theme park division. I mean, we're opening and trying new things, and will that back off, right?
Speaking of which, before I forget, and just quick side note here, friend of the show and our Eye in the Sky bio-reconstruct, did you see that footage that he shared from street level of the new Epic Universe Goodnight show, them doing the fireworks test at night?
I saw fireworks testing. I also saw that they're playing around with like the lighting package on the Grand Helios, which looked really cool. So, lots. Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see. I mean, I'm excited to see it's coming soon. So we'll actually get to see the real thing here, as opposed to, semi shots here and there on camera. So that'll be fun.
Yeah. So, all right. Now, speaking of the Universal Parks, we also had some news today. Yet another house revealed for this year's Halloween Horror Nights. And this one, wow, I'm trying to remember when the first Hellraiser movie came out. Wasn't that the 80s?
Listen, Jim, I just remember going to the local video store, and they had all the horror movies in the back. And I just remember seeing what would now known as Pinhead, and just being like, all right. And my mom was like, yep, you're not allowed back there. Those are, not the real bad movies. That was a whole separate room. But these were the movies that we were like, no, rated R, you can't see those. Yeah. So it was young enough. It came out when I was young enough to remember, like, I wasn't able to watch it. But I guess this is the White Whale that they've been trying to get. This is one of the major horror genre or horror picture or classics that they have yet to have a house with. But they announced the Hellraiser haunted house is coming both to Orlando and Hollywood. So lots of praise online, and that's hot off the press the day of recording.
Wow.
You just got the email. I just got the email. Jim, are you a Hellraiser fan? Have you seen?
I am in the corner with your mom. My brother Peter actually came across this film series before I did and was very into it. But I was managing a cinema, when all this stuff came down, and it was just the notion of these are R-rated horror films from the 80s, and that was new territory then. So they found different ways to be gruesome. So I've always kind of stood at the outside of the whole Pinhead phenomenon and the puzzle box, and it's like, I'm going to be over here, the Disney Disney movies, the cat from outer space, just
the gnome mobile. Not so scary. Yeah. I get you. And I don't know much about this film's franchise, but I do think it's great that they are, looks to be, it's going to feature Pinhead, the Cenobites, correct me if I'm wrong, and then they do have the voice of the original Pinhead actor Doug Bradley is participating in this. So I think that's super cool for all those horror fans out there. And this does seem like it would be a really, really cool house. So all types, and that was a big announcement. Lots of people there. But we also had 2 other houses that actually ends that gives us all the originals. Did you see the Invasion Alien Abduction house?
Yeah, this one is supposed to be a remote homestead that's attacked by greys looking for human test subject. Didn't we just talk about a Spielberg movie that they almost made, Night Skies, that kind of had that story?
Yeah. Jim, if I didn't know that they already had these things well planned in advance and so forth, I would say they might have been inspired by a fefeature from a couple weeks ago. But yeah, this one looks fun. I don't know. I kind of like alien stuff. I've always loved the unsolved mystery shows and aliens, but this is it's basically exactly like you said, built around alien contact and body horror style experimentation. So we have some greys attacking us. So
okay, so yeah, I mean, well, that'll be such a difference from going into the Hellraiser house, Okay.
Then we also got Cybergoria. It's a house that was announced. This is essentially sends guests into a distant future ruled by machines, where the promise of eternal life comes with deadly consequences. So this is what you get for making all those horrible AI poster graphics, all you people out there. This is what we're going to get, Cybergoria in the future. So this looks like a fun one. It's essentially sci-fi horror. So I thought it was fun because, guest of the show, Mikey Ello, basically said that's all 5 original houses this year. It is quite a lineup. We got Jack and Oddfellows, Chaos Control, Madlands. We have Cybergoria, and Alien Invasion, and HR Blood and Guts. Jim, do you have a favorite?
Oh, I have to admit, I'm looking at the trailer, or excuse me, the posters that Mike has shared here, and graphically, I really like the HR Blood and Guts. Though the Oddfellows, Chaos and Control looks cool as well. So, yeah, we're going to have to get down there for this.
We got some winners. Yeah, this looks exciting. So, I think that is, there seems to be, the chatter online is still, there's some big houses to be announced. The people are saying Aussie. So, that's what the people are saying. I don't know if that's true.
Okay. Well, we initially got the hint from the family about that.
It was a no answer. Yeah, it was like a non-answer kind of thing. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm excited about the houses so far. The originals are hits, and then we have Stranger Things Sinners, and now we have Pinhead and Hellraiser. That's a pretty big lineup.
That is pretty impressive. All right. So circling back to Universal Orlando now, this isn't really inside the park we're talking about, but this is more about outside of the park, the bus system.
Yeah, Jim, I feel like this move or this article, Universal just didn't feel the love because they weren't having enough bus controversies as Disney was. So I feel like they just wanted to make some news here just to get some clicks. But no, BioReconstruct, Eye in the Sky took some pictures, and it looks like the Universal CityWalk Orlando is like they're doing some bus improvements as a new terminal entry. So, I mean, probably not super exciting for many people out there that were, competing in new stories with, different houses and IPs. But this is something that's kind of, important for all of those using the bus, getting in and out earlier. So it looks to be that they're doing some, essentially some work in CityWalk to make sure that it's easier for people to get in and out. The buses, most importantly, which could save times during like peak traffic periods, which is around Halloween Horror Nights. So I figured it'd be worth mentioning to say, hey, there's some bus talk on Universal too.
Okay. And sliding back now to Universal Hollywood, and we're coming to the close of World Cup, aren't we? So time for celebrations?
Well, there is, and I mean, we didn't cover this a little earlier, but it's been going on for the last couple weeks. But for the most part, you still have time. If you were a FIFA World Cup fan, there are some nice pop-up events and theme foods and specialty drinks happening in CityWalk, and just thought maybe we'd mention a couple of them. But if you know, I have a coworker of mine big into soccer and big into FIFA, so I've heard all about it. I don't know much at all, so he's giving me all the information, but they're diehard. So I figured, if you want to watch some solid soccer and World Cup, why not do it in style?
Sure.
But you can watch the semifinal matches right now. That's on July 14th and 15th, and the World Cup final on the 19th over at CityWalk. So there's going to be 5 Tower Stage and NBC Sports Grill and Brew are essentially hosting some stuff there.
Okay.
Along with some, basically there's Voodoo Donut will offer a goal donut. Yeah, not as good. I should have screamed it a little louder, but
that's okay.
Thank your ears. You probably are all wearing headphones, so you don't want that. And there's just different activities going on. So I think that, if you missed out, then head over to CityWalk and enjoy yourself some FIFA and World Cup while you still can.
Okay. And, again, World Cup, international, and speaking of world travelers, our pal Drew Taylor, my co-host on the Fine Tuning podcast, he was over in Annecy, the International Animation Film Festival last week, and we had a surprising amount of Universal, and when I say Universal, we're talking about DreamWorks Animation, Illumination Animation, things coming from those folks talked up as part of this year's Annecy.
Yeah, and this is more so a plug for your guys' show over in Fine Tuning. I listened to it this morning, and you guys talked all types of stuff, and you get all types of great information. It sounds like Drew was pretty big when it came to, was he the moderator of the Universal and Illuminations Minions and Monsters panel, or he was highly involved? As a result of which, he was definitely in the mix when, for example, the news broke about the Donkey prequel film, which will follow Shrek 5, which is arriving in theaters July of next year, 2027, and obviously it'll have, some sort of a theme park presence, but 2028 is when we're going to get the Donkey prequel. And what's fun about that one is that, we only learned about that because Eddie Murphy can't keep its mouth closed. It's just sort of like, I want to say it was as far back as 2023. He's like, what do you mean they're making a Puss in Boots movie? They should make a donkey movie. In fact, they are making a donkey movie. Yeah, that's. Well, I love it when actors aren't very good. I mean, Tom Holland was the best back in the day.
I know. I love Tom. Just the notion of, can you keep a secret? Yeah, please.
Yeah, he had to have a handler. But no, there was some. You guys talked about Forgotten Island. It sounds like it's a good one that's coming out, and I mean, obviously when movies are successful, they turn into theme park attractions or meet and greets or all types of stuff. So it's something on the lookout. Plus, also things like, I believe there's a Ghostbusters. Is it a cartoon? That's Netflix. But if Ghostbusters rises in popularity, there's some stuff that is, related to Universal that Ghostbusters might be something that they would, dust off. Along with, is there a new Cat in the Hat, either a movie or series?
That's Warner Brothers. So, but the early word on that is that, crazy good. Though, we're kind of burying the lead here. Do you remember the other news that broke in the past week about the Grinch sequel?
Oh, there's so much news coming out. You're right. Yeah. We had all types of people even reaching out and saying, hey, did you see this? And I'm like, is Jim Carrey really going to get back in that chair? Because you told horrific stories.
No. That's what's fascinating to me. And, they actually brought in, Ron Howard, the director of the original Grinch film from 2000, was so concerned about Jim Carrey's reaction that he brought in a guy who worked with guys who'd been tortured in Nam by the Viet Cong. And it was just the notion of that's how painful the makeup was. But it's a legitimate Grinch sequel with, Jim Carrey is supposed to be back. Ron Howard, the director, is supposed to be back. Brian Glazier, who produced the film, also coming back, and it's just sort of like, wow, I wouldn't have had money on that. That was not, something I saw coming over the horizon. So
yeah, Jim, but what I don't think will be coming back is the practical makeup. I think there's the technology. I imagine they're going to put those little dots on his face, and he's not going to have to worry about it, and they're going to do it all in post. What do you think?
Oh, that's interesting. I'm just going to say that I hope it's an improvement over. Have you ever seen the animation test that's out there for the Jim Carrey version of The Incredible Mr. Limpet?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
all right.
I have. Yes, I think we'll be a little bit better than that, Jim. Don't you?
Okay, all right. I'm just saying that, that was early dots on face, and it was like, no.
I think we escaped on that one. But yeah, lots of news, Jim. There was a ton of news, but there's probably some that we'll cover back next week even. So
absolutely. So, speaking of Ron Howard, the director of The Grinch, he also directed Backdraft. And when we get back from this break, we're going to talk about how that Ron Howard film from 1991 wound up in Universal Hollywood in 92 as a brand new attraction built on at that point, still brand spanking new studio center at that theme park. But before we get to that, there's this.
Tomorrow morning is knocking. Stock your fridge now. How about a creamy mocha frappuccino drink? Or a sweet vanilla? Smooth caramel, maybe? Or a white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Find Starbucks Frappuccino drinks wherever you buy your groceries.
Introducing Taco Bell's new jalapeno citrus salsa. With bright citrus, real red jalapenos, guajillo chiles. Usually, you add sauce to the food, but when the sauce is this good, the food is just there to get the sauce to your mouth. That rolled quesadilla, not a rolled quesadilla anymore. Now it's a sauce shovel. Taco Bell's jalapeno citrus salsa. Get it with any item on the Cantina chicken menu while it's here. At participating U.S. Taco Bell locations for a limited time only. While supplies last, contact store for availability.
Chronic migraine, 15 or more headache days a month, each lasting 4 hours or more, can make me feel like a spectator in my own life.
Botox, onabotulinum toxin A, prevents headaches in adults with chronic migraine. It's not for those with 14 or fewer headache days a month. It's the #1 prescribed branded chronic migraine preventive treatment.
Prescription Botox is injected by your doctor. Effects of Botox may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away, as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness can be signs of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Side effects may include allergic reactions, neck and injection site pain, fatigue, and headache. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Don't receive Botox if there's a skin infection. Tell your doctor your medical history, muscle or nerve conditions, including ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects.
Why wait? Ask your doctor, visit BotoxChronicMigraine.com, or call 1-800-44-BOTOX to learn more.
And again, we're back, folks. And as we mentioned at the top of the show, this podcast gets posted on July 3rd. And the day after that is when the United States celebrates its 250th anniversary, which will involve a lot of fireworks. And I already did the terrible fireworks joke at the top of the show. But we're gonna talk now about Backdraft, which again was a film that Universal released back in, I want to say, May of 1991. By the way, Eric, did solid business. Sold 152 million worth of tickets worldwide. In fact, would have made the top 10 for North American ticket sales that year. Got knocked out at the last minute by Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, Secret of the Ooze.
Yeah, but I think 91 was a really good year, though, wasn't it? That was like Silence of the Lambs, Beauty and the Beast, JFK. Wasn't that really a good year?
Oh, yeah. No. It was a crazy year for big box office films. But.
Yeah, that's impressive to be there. I mean, Secret of the Ooze, I'm sorry that you got beat by them. I actually did remember seeing that as a kid. So.
All right. But again, Ron Howard wanted to make his film that honored firefighters to be as authentic as possible. So he persuaded Universal that we really shouldn't shoot it on the lower lot. We should go someplace. We should go to Chicago. And so starting late July of 1990, right through to early December that same year, 1990, this is where they shot this film. And, $40 million, a good amount of money back in the 90s. So I want to share a story, Eric, about what supposedly happened on the set of Backdraft on November 7th, 1990. Kurt Russell, who played the lead, Lieutenant Bull McCaffrey, he's the man in charge of engine number 17 at the Chicago Fire Department. That morning, he walks onto the set of this movie, and then he tosses a copy of the Chicago Tribune in Ron Howard's lap and says to the effect is like, well, if we wanted to make this movie authentic, maybe we should have stayed in L.A. And this is when Ron Howard picks up the paper and looks, and there, what's the headline on the Chicago Tribune? Giant fire consumes much of the Universal lower lot out in Hollywood. Damage is estimated at $25 million.
Yeah.
And I know we talked at length about the backlot fires that happened at Universal on a earlier edition of this podcast, but I just want to spend a moment here to talk about the fire from November of 1990 again, because evidently it was the day after the fire that Lou Wasserman, the head of MC at that point, said, okay, let's rebuild. And so a team of architects that day, Eric, supposedly start drawing up plans for a new version of New York Street for Universal Studios Hollywood. But by the way, this is a 7-acre chunk that went up in flames, and it, had 11 different intersecting streets. And so they have to quickly draw up these plans. Construction begins on November 27th. So it's just 20 days after the fire. They're suddenly, okay, start to build. And by April 1st of 1991, enough work has been done, Eric, that Newsies can then begin shooting on this brand new version of, the Lower East Side, which ironically enough is being built on the lower lot. But anyway, back to construction at Universal Hollywood back in the early 90s. I want to take a sec here to talk about what opened on March 15th, 1991, and that was the Universal Starway, which, Eric, you'll remember from our trip out, this March.
Yeah.
Because, it's this interconnected set of, 3 escalators, 4 supporting bridges, has an absolutely spectacular view of, the Burbank area. I mean, I think we stood there and it was like, okay, that's Disney, that's Warner's, that's way too many golf courses.
Right. That'll never go away, that they're not going to sell. We could be building all types of theme parks there, but somebody's got money.
There we go. But this was built, started construction in 89, and it's this 900-foot long, a quarter of a mile long system that brings you down from the upper lot, which, by the way, it's a 200-foot vertical drop otherwise. But this was done because at this time, Lou Wasserman and the folks running the operation at Universal Studios Hollywood, they had made the decision like, look, we don't want to be just a studio tour anymore. We want to be a motion picture-based themed attraction. But in order to do that, you need rides, you need shows. And so this is what the Starway made possible. It brought people down off of the upper lot to the lower lot. By the way, the other name that was used during this period is the upper lot was known as the Entertainment Center. And then if you came down the stairs at the very bottom, it was the Tour Center or the Studio Center. But anyway, the notion was we need 3 or 4 4 attractions down here at the bottom to lure people off of the upper lot to come down and experience this. So already under construction by June of 1990 is the Universal Hollywood version of the E.T. adventure. And by the way, this wouldn't open till June of the following year. And remember, we've also talked on an earlier edition of this podcast about Lucy the Tribute, the thing that Lucy Arnaz, basically come to this house, take all of my mom's stuff out of the closet, put it in your museum. They built that down there as part of the first iteration of the studio center, the lower lot. There was also an effect show called the World of Cinemagic, which, again, to give you some idea of where we are in Universal history, the big demo in this version of the special effects show was showing folks how they did the 1.21 gigawatt thing from Back to the Future. But this is pricey. For example, building a 60,000 square foot building to house a West Coast version of the E.T. adventure, that's a lot of money. Yeah. And building the Starway and site prep. Eric, this is $200 million that the company spent from 89 to 91. And in the end, even that amount of money only goes so far. So which is why when it came time to do a Backdraft themed show, they were like, I don't think we can build something new. Why don't we? Oh, look at that soundstage over there, Soundstage 30. Is that available? And they're like, that one? Really? Where we shot Leave It to Beaver? By the way, you'll love this, Eric, that this is where the Cleaver house from Leave It to Beaver was located from the late 1950s, early 1960s. But when Wally and the Beav move out, who moves in? Herman and Lily Munster. This is where the Munsters, the interiors of the Munsters was shot. So I love it. It's like, wow, it's a sitcom, but two very different sitcoms.
I imagine it was all black and white back then, so you didn't have to do too much. If not, I would say just throw in some black paint. It'll make it look real good. There we go.
But that'll be fine. But all right, but how do you go from a place where June Cleaver walks around with her pearls to then become a place that Eric has to catch fire 150 to 200 times every day and then deal with temperatures of sometimes 2,000 degrees? How do you do that? Well, we'll get to that in a sec. But before we do that, there's this.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Listening to this podcast instead of doom scrolling? Smart move. Another smart move? Getting help from one of State Farm's 19,000 local agents when you choose to bundle home and auto. Bundling, just another way to save with the Personal Price Plan. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
This summer, serve up the Cookout Classics, Oscar Mayer hot dogs and Heinz mustard. Grill up a dog, add classic yellow mustard, or loaded Chicago style. We all know it's not a cookout without Oscar Mayer and Heinz.
And we're back. Okay, folks, Eric and I were talking about how Universal Creative took Backdraft the movie, which again, reminder, they first released to theaters back in May of 1991 and then turned that Ron Howard film into Backdraft the Attraction, which opened at Universal Studios Hollywood in July of 1992. And then there was a version that opened at Universal Studios Japan in March of 2001. But we're mostly talking about the Hollywood here now. And that's 14 months, Eric, between when the movie is first released to theaters and when Backdraft the Attraction starts entertaining guests down on the lower lot, again, in what's initially known as a studio center. And what's interesting is that the West Coast version of E.T. Adventure and Backdraft basically open in the exact same window of time at Universal Hollywood, summer of 1992. which, by the way, resulted in Universal having one of its best summers attendance-wise in the history of the attraction. I want to say nearly 5 million people came out to visit the park. But, okay, now, Backdraft the attraction. Okay, it's a walkthrough. It's designed as a 3-act show where 500 people at a time are pulsed through the show building, and each act of Backdraft the attraction is supposed to highlight how difficult it is to shoot a movie that features so many flame effects. But Eric, it was this attraction's finale, which recreated that moment from the Backdraft movie where a warehouse caught fire. In fact, before we get started here, Eric was watching the trailer, for the original Backdraft from '91. And I would imagine they had a few clips from the warehouse fire in that.
Oh, there was lots of fires, Jim. I couldn't tell necessarily exactly what everything was on fire, but plenty of fire. So, yeah, you're telling me if there's a warehouse on fire, I'll take your word for it.
Okay. All right. So Universal, and again, remember, they didn't have to build a brand new building. And
Right.
by the way, E.T., to get a brand new E.T. up out of the ground in a brand new building out in Hollywood, that was $60 million. So to get a Backdraft attraction in a pre-existing soundstage 30, to get it done for $10 million, that's pretty cool. That's some smart financial work there. But that $10 million mostly gets spent on effects that would be used in the flame-filled finale. Eric, there were 40 different effects that went off over the course of, and it's only a 2-minute long show at the very end. But they had this really sneaky finale moment because you enter this warehouse space, and they make you walk up a set of stairs onto an elevated platform, and you then watch fire start quietly in an upstairs office, and then spreads throughout the entire room, and then eventually the entire place is engulfed in flames. And it's at this point that the platform that you're standing on suddenly lurches forward, like an inch. Just it drops, and you get that you're unsettled because you think, oh my God, I'm gonna fall into the fire. And but again, you're just dropping a half an inch, but it's enough to screw with your sense of safety. But again, with this many flame effects going off inside of this tight space, which, by the way, just so you get a sense of how big what they did in this part of Soundstage 30 was. Eric, this thing, the finale was staged in a space that was 90 feet wide, 60 feet deep, 40 feet tall. All right. So, and it took 1,000 cubic feet of natural gas to create the flame effects every 2 minutes for every time they did this.
Right.
And by the way, just so you understand, folks, back in 1991, a 1,000 cubic feet of natural gas is what it took to power a typical home in Southern California for an entire year. So, by the way, we've got much more fuel efficient since 1992, but you get, this is not cheap to do this.
No.
And more to the point, when you fire off that much, fuel in a tight space, it would reach 2,000 degrees. But they had this amazing ventilation system, Eric, that, first of all, there was this cool air curtain that, was created between you and the room. So you were looking out at the space. So, but an incredibly devious touch on Universal Creative's part, that what they did to heighten your anxiety is from behind you, they pumped warm air onto the people standing on the platform. So you weren't exposed to the actual heat that's going on inside of the warehouse, but you're feeling the heat increase behind you, and that's what's making you that much more anxious. Not understanding that there's also a giant thing of cold air between you and the actual fire. But anyway, they have this huge air conditioning, air transfer system up on the roof. In fact, what was fascinating about this, Eric, is that between shows, and again, it's, audience comes in, views this, 2 minutes long. As they march out, the next group marches in. But as they're marching in, there's a system on the roof that is exchanging 200,000 square feet of air, just pumping it out of the room and suddenly making it cool again, so you're not clued into what's going on here. Now, mind you, again, when you're actually exposing props and everything to 2,000 degree heat over and over and over and over again, that can have a lot of wear and tear on things, which is why everything that in this warehouse space was covered with, I want to say, a half-inch coat of fire prevention chemicals. I mean, you hear that, you think, okay, all these precautions, no possible way that, this building on the lower lot of Universal could ever catch fire, right?
You're not, Jim, you're not telling me this thing caught on fire.
September 24th, 1992. And by the way, this is just 3 months after Backdraft, the attraction, is open. So, and remember, we were talking about that amazing air exchange system, the air conditioning up on the roof. There's a workman up there on the afternoon of September 24th, 1992, and he's making some repairs. And he goes to solder a copper pipe to a piece of ductwork when he accidentally sets the roof on fire.
Oh. They didn't fireproof the roof, Jim. Is that what you're saying?
Well, here's the funny thing that this comes from a friend who's worked at Universal forever. He said the call to the studio's on-site fire department supposedly went something like this. Phone rings. It's like, Backdraft is on fire. And the person who works at the fire station is like, yes, I know. Sometimes 200 times a day. No, not inside. Outside, the roof is on fire. It's like, you're kidding. It's like, no, get down here now. And now, mind you, smallish fire, easily contained, still managed to do $150,000 worth of damage. But again, it was very sophisticated air exchange equipment. But the kicker, Eric, is that inside the building, there are 1,500 people in each of those 3 rooms, and the team members run in and say, the building is on fire. You need to leave now. And the guys are like, yeah, right.
Right. They thought it was a gag, right? It became a comedy show.
I stood in line for a half hour to get in here. I'm not leaving now. But after 15 minutes and pouring all sorts of water on the roof, they eventually put out the fire. And speaking of putting something out, the West Coast version of Backdraft, the attraction, it hung in there till 2009, 2010, then closed to make room for Transformers The Ride 3D. That opens in 2011. If we now pivot over to Osaka, they got, as part of, it was an opening day attraction at Universal Studios Japan, Backdraft. So it came online in March of 2001, and it lasted till September of 2020. Whereupon a decision was made that they really wanted VillainCon Minion Blast, which, interesting, that hadn't even opened officially yet at Universal Studios Florida. But, in fact, it wouldn't open at that park till July of 2023. But, the folks in Osaka were like, that looks interesting. When you figure that out, we want that too. And so they got it at that park in July of 2025. But in the middle of this, Backdraft, the attraction, is no more. But Backdraft, the movie, gets a direct-to-video sequel. And the kicker, it's actually made by Universal Pictures Home Entertainment. It gets released in May of 2019, and it has, I want to say, Scott Glenn, and the Baldwin, who also appeared in the film. They came back. How many years is that? 1991 to 2019? Damn near 30 years.
Well, that's one of the funnier things of this story, Jim, is imagine a Backdraft being made into attraction this time, like this day. Like, it wasn't the number one film. It wasn't a franchise. It was just a regular movie made by Ron Howard that they're like, hey, we're going to turn it into something. You don't see that in theme parks anymore. Like, you literally have to be a billion-dollar franchise. I mean, there are wonderful movies that should have rides, attractions, and something now, and you can't do it. So it is a funny. It's like a funny time during that time where you do something like that. Even like getting E.T. made in 92 or 91. I mean, that film's almost 10 years old by the time they make it's like you wouldn't do that anymore. It just seems like you have to be a sure bet hit to get at a theme park attraction. So good for Backdraft.
No, that's an excellent observation on your part. And yes, honestly, today a Backdraft wouldn't get an attraction. Though the interesting thing is supposedly Universal Creative wanted it because it was like, oh, it's all pyro effects. That'll actually be different from the world of Cinemagic. So, we can do pyro effects over here. We can do like miniatures and wire work and, on that effect. So you get two bites of the same apple, so to speak. But
I would love to know, I think Universal must have the best lawyers in the world just to be able to throw people in to these rooms with all the fire. It just seems like fire is so unpredictable, right?
Oh, yeah.
To be able to say, we're going to go ahead and make this attraction 200 times a day. We're going to put all these people in here. And so I think that, and whoever their accountants or whoever approved this, because that just sounded like a lot of wasted money and effort going, heat it up, cool it down, heat it up, cool it down. So kudos to getting that across the board and keeping it alive for so long.
There we go. And on that note, folks, that's going to do it for this week's edition of the Epic Universal podcast. And by the way, if you have any topics that you'd like Mr. Hersey and I to discuss or suggestions for stories you'd like us to pursue for this podcast, feel free to send those along via social media. But with that, just want to thank you for listening to today's show, and we will be back next week with a brand new episode.